The argument was there was no evidence of an ancient civilization from 10,000 plus years ago. This is before the discovery of Gobeklitepe. Gobeklitepe gets discovered known to be more than 11,000 years ago. That changes everything. Because now we know, yes it does.
That's changed
now,
for
hold
what?
on. Because now we know there was an advanced civilization capable of a spectacular construction 11,000 plus years ago.
This is what, listen, look at the archeologists in Turkey or in any civilization.
Okay.
They never talk about old civilization.
That's not true. Göbekli is universally accepted as being more than 11,000 years old.
I am talking now about Egypt. I'm not going
No, I
to
understand,
another
but the
civilization.
argument was that there was never any ancient civilization capable of spectacular construction 10,000 years ago. Now that they showed Gobekli Tepe is more than 11,000 years old, they know for sure that's not true.
Look at the archeologists in Turkey or in any civilization.
Okay.
They never talk about old civilization.
That's not true.
Just listen to what Zahi Hawass said.
Look at the archeologists in Turkey or in any civilization.
Okay.
They never talk about old civilization.
That's not true.
He said no Egyptologist or archeologist would call Gobeklitepe a civilization. And that's true, because the only element that differentiates civilization from culture is written language. And Gobeklitepe doesn't have a written language, just like the ancient ruins in Malta. These are called Maltesian culture. If you watch any documentary about Malta that have ancient ruins, huge stones that go back to 5,000 years ago, they still call it culture because they haven't found any written language to this culture. So the single factor that marks a differentiator between civilization and culture is written language, because all the knowledge is in written language. And that's what makes us civilized, written language, not just oral language. Like in South Africa, for example, they have like maybe 12 dialects, but none of them was written. So they never grew up to the stage of being a civilization from their ancient times, just like Nubian. Nubian was never written by its original people, but Latinized people like Romans and Greeks came to Egypt in Ptolemaic era, and they decided, those Greeks decided for the Nubians to put the alphabet, the Greek alphabet, onto their dialects. So this doesn't count as a civilization. This counts as the Greek civilization giving the alphabet to a dialect of another country, just like they have in South Africa as well. They Latinized the language, just like Coptic is Latinized, even though it's original to the land, as in spoken dialect. But written-wise, it never grew up to be from among the civilization. That's why we can never say those letters are original to the land. That's why it's very important to make these markers in history so we can better understand the past and categorize everything into its righteous pockets. Also, any archaeologist who considers Gobeklitepe to be a civilization is either tricked or being a trickster. These are referred to by archaeologists to be a culture, so they say Maltesian culture, simply because of the fact that it's lacking a written language, even though it has huge stone architecture and even maybe farming and farming of animals. But still, these elements wouldn't categorize it as a civilization. And that's why in ancient Egypt, we don't say ancient Egyptian civilization and go back to, 25,000 years ago, because we have things from 25,000 years ago. We say civilization starts from our first finds of written language. And that's the start of civilization. This doesn't negate that there is stuff before that, but there are cultures. And this should make you reflect on how important written language is. For a person or a group of people to be civilized, you have to leave knowledge for your grandkids. This knowledge has to be in a form of writing of some sort, so you can pass down the knowledge to generations, even if what's written is just tales and imaginary things to us. And even if the written things are totally wrong to us, still this is passing down their knowledge. And also, the last point, even if we find written language that predates ancient Egypt in somewhere in the world, this doesn't mean that this written language means an advanced civilization, because there is something that can be called a primitive civilization. So it doesn't necessarily mean once you find written language equals advanced civilization. Because ancient Egyptian hieroglyph, when it first started, it was still primitive civilization. And there are such examples in the world, I'm sure, where there's written language, but no great architecture, maybe no farming, maybe no idea of science in general. Maybe it didn't last for a very long time like ancient Egypt for it to grow and be advanced in their time. So all these things are to consider. But then again, who am I talking to? If your conclusion is already predetermined, just like Graham Hancock and all the pseudo-archaeologists and pseudo-scientists. And that's everything you need to know about this.